Good morning. This lesson is entitled, If These Airplanes Could Talk. Here in a minute, I'm going to go over just some history of aviation, talk about some different things, and I want you to think about 6 questions. I want you to think about who, what, when, where, why, and how. And later on, I'm going to ask you to apply those 6 questions to something specific. So we're going to start out talking about a little bit of history of aviation. Not all of it, because there's just entirely too much to cover in this short period. But today we're going to talk about some of the older history of aviation, starting back in the BC time. Man has always been fascinated with flight. The first known attempts at flying literally were guys taking and creating wings to put on their arms and then covering them with feathers and seeing if they could fly that way. Obviously, that did not work. The first successful man-made flying device is the kite. It was first invented in China around 400 BC. And kites work by generating lift, just like today's modern airplanes do. Devices that use this type of technology are referred to as heavier than air aircraft. 100 years later, 300 BC, the Chinese invented the Kongming lantern. Kongming lantern is also known as a paper lantern. And what they would do is they would create this paper bag, and they would burn a candle underneath it. And as the candle burned, it would heat the air inside the bag, which would cause the lantern to rise or float away. This concept was later used to create hot air balloons. The heated air inside the balloon is lighter than the cooler, denser air outside of the balloon, and that's why it is able to rise. So the devices that use this type of technology are classified as lighter than aircraft. There's been several different types of aircraft. You've got gliders that were invented, and they started out being made of really thin sheets of wood, which they've now gone to more fabric type. But today, when we think about flying, we think about airplanes. And it wasn't really until the 19th century when they finally had man-made flying machines. But even then, it really wasn't until the 20th century that we really understood flight as we know it today. Today, aircraft are being made of aluminum instead of wood and fabric. And aviators, they're experimenting with different types of wing structures. When they first started out, they tried things such as monoplanes, which means one set of wings, biplane, which means 2 sets of wings, and triplane, which means 3 sets of wings. As they refined their designs, monoplanes were made with various wing designs and different control surfaces, such as your ailerons, elevators, rudders, etc. But really, the airplane was first created or first invented by the Wright brothers. They created the first engine-powered aircraft. Now we're going to talk about a little bit of aircraft identification. So every aircraft has some way to identify them, whether it's the way they're constructed or the style of plane they are. But another way that you can identify them is looking at the markings or inscriptions on the plane. Generally, you're going to see these inscriptions or these markings on the fuselage or the wings. Civilian aircrafts have a alphanumeric registration number, which is really similar to a license plate that you'd see on a car. And then the alphanumeric markings for the aircraft registered in the United States begin with the letter N. And they're referred to as tail numbers because generally they're usually displayed on the tail of the aircraft. However, older aircrafts displayed them on the underside of the wings so that they could be read by someone standing on the ground when they flew. Now, back then, you didn't have airplanes flying at the altitude that they do today. So it was much easier to be able to read what was written on the underside of the wing. Military aircraft also have insignias on their fuselage, wings, or tail. These are meant to help identify the nation or air force to which the aircraft belongs to. Many military planes also have identification numbers similar to civilian aircraft. They started marking these on the military aircraft around 1913. Giving you that information, what I want to ask for you today is to research a particular airplane and ask the 6 questions that I posed at the beginning of this video. The who, what, when, where, why, and how. So what I'm asking you to do is find an airplane online and answer those 6 questions. So with the who, you could either talk about who developed the aircraft, who used the aircraft, or who is associated with this aircraft, such as the country or even the company that created it. The what would be, what was the function of this aircraft? What materials are used? What style of wing design is used? What type of wing placement does the aircraft have? What propulsion system does the aircraft use? With the when, it could be, when was the aircraft produced? When was the aircraft flown? When was the aircraft retired? With where was the aircraft produced? Where was the aircraft registered? Where was the aircraft used? Why would be, why would a museum want to keep this airplane? Why is this airplane important to local, regional, national, or international history? And then the how is, how was the airplane used? A couple of examples is if I were to go with the 1903 Wright Flyer, the plane that the Wright brothers invented. My who would be who developed the aircraft, Orville and Wilbur Wright. My what is what was the function of the aircraft? It was to become the world's first successful powered heavier than air flying machine. What materials are used? The airframe was made out of wood with muslin fabric. Then I could talk about the when. When was the aircraft produced? 1903. The where was the aircraft produced? The aircraft was produced in the Wright brothers bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. Why? So why would a museum want to keep this plane? Well, it was the first powered airplane to fly. And then how? How was it used? It was used as a test plane, flown over a dirt field several times over the course of one day, December 17th, 1903. Hopefully you got a little bit of information out of this lesson, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.